Hello and welcome to this free PDU Podcast sample. My name is Cornelius Fichtner. I am the host of the program. In the next 10 minutes or so, you are going to see a shortened version of an actual webinar taken from the PDU Podcast series. The idea is to give you an idea of what our webinars are like and allow you to try them on your portable media player. That's why we give you both a high-resolution and a low-resolution version of each of our free podcast samples here. Copy them to your player and try them out. To find out more and order your full subscription to the PDU podcast, please go to pducast.com. That's pducast.com. And now, here's your sample webinar. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of Dealing with Difficult People. Let's do a quick overview. Here we go. You are currently watching the module 2, which we titled Quick Tips out of the 6 modules in this PM lecture. And here is once again Margaret taking us through the learning goals for this particular module.
Great. Now we're going to discuss tips that should help in most situations with difficult people. We're going to talk about the merits of preparing for difficult encounters, why we should really listen to someone we consider to be difficult, and why we should be flexible and remind ourselves to be objective, and always allowing heated conversations and situations to cool down before we forge ahead.
You said that this would be applicable in most situations. What situations then is it not applicable for?
Well, what we're covering here is times when you can plan in advance. And you can't always plan in advance. So these tips are geared more towards that. And even so, sometimes there are people who don't respond to feeling like they're being handled. And that's an aspect of their difficult personality, is that they become, I'll say, cantankerous and don't like to feel like they're being handled or managed. So, these tips may not work for people like that.
Okay, and talking about tips, I think next we have some Let's Talk tips.
Okay, let's talk tips. We can't plan for every outburst, but there are times when you know you are going to face your difficult person. So when you do know, plan for it. Many of us do just the opposite. We don't think about the encounter or plan how to make it less difficult. We just wait until the last minute and then hope for the best. Or we become defensive and we act oddly or inappropriately, which immediately puts the other person on the defensive. And, that's basically just like acting like an ostrich sticking its head in its sand. You know it's coming up. Get prepared. You create a project plan, don't you? This is like a people plan. Okay. Consider this approach. Prepare for the conversation in advance. Identify what you hope to gain from the interaction and begin with this end in mind. Assume a positive result. I call it starting with an A. It works like this. At the beginning of a class, as an instructor, I assume all my students are going to get an A, and I tell them that. We all assume success together. Then I tell them what they need to do to keep that A. So I don't give A's away, but I say, today, here we are together, you have an A. Here's what you're going to do to keep it. And most of them do. So as you prepare for your encounter, assume that it's going to be successful. Give yourself credit and assume that the person is going to work with you. Don't get all tensed up and ready for a fight or ready to find difficulty in the first word or expression or posture of that person when you approach them.
Is this similar to the mental exercises that many professional athletes go through? They review the race in advance, they go through the movements, and they see themselves winning in the end? Is that the same idea?
Absolutely, yes. And I'll just say, consider this a relay or an athletic event where you have a partner okay, pretend you're at the park and you're in a 3-legged race. You two are tied together and you only cross the finish line together. So you're preparing for how can I help us cross the finish line together. All right, let's take a look at some more tips. Be flexible. Do not be so focused on your end goal that you cannot take a detour in the conversation, because these detours, these might be what help you really understand the perspective of your difficult person, and they might understand you better as well. Remember, you prepared, so you probably have some kind of agenda. Your difficult person didn't necessarily have this advantage. So again, you want to not just stick to your way. Select a time that is convenient for both of you, a time when you both can listen and exchange information freely without additional pressures or distraction. So first thing in the morning when somebody gets to their desk, not smart. When somebody's trying to go home, not smart. So, be courteous and find a time that works for both of you.
In this regard, at some point you have to walk up to the difficult person and you have to say, I'd like to meet with you to talk about X. To me, this is a very, very stressful situation because, these are the things that you don't really bring out into the open and you really have to step over your shadow in a moment like this. So how do you phrase this when you walk up to that difficult person and you want to tell them, hey, look, let's meet, I want to talk to you? What kind of words do you personally use?
Okay. Well, a couple of things here. It can be a casual approach. Even though you've thought about it, doesn't mean you have to have a formal agenda. And it doesn't mean you had to put something on someone's calendar, even though I said, be mindful of what is a good time of day. So it might be that you come to me casually and approach me and start with some other conversation and then say, gosh, the other day it seemed like we didn't end on a positive note, or I'm concerned that you were upset by bliff, whatever bliff or action was. Can we talk about it? So you can have a casual approach. You can absolutely say, let's put aside some formal time. I think if it becomes more formal, it's very important not to show up with a piece of paper and say, here's the agenda, because then, I would feel attacked
so
if I were that person.
Don't bring the agenda. Okay.
Yeah, the agenda, I'm going to say, is kind of in your head, unless the two of you decide to sit down together and say, we need the agenda to help us talk. Sometimes an agenda can be a tool if two people are really having a hard time, but then you set it up together. I don't want to come and inflict my agenda on you. Okay, so I'm asking you to listen, really listen to what your difficult person is saying. And if they look at you and they say something like, I can't do that, or that won't work, ask them why. Because whatever issue they're having, it's not about you. And it's not likely to really be insubordination. It's the way some people think. They think with the block of I can't first, and then later they'll figure it out. But sometimes when you're in a role, especially as a project manager, you're thinking that they're refusing to do the work or they're refusing to meet the goal. And they're not. They're blocked. So you want to try to get the real problem out in the open. You want to maintain emotional objectivity. Remember, whatever is driving them to be difficult is something that's in them, something that is troubling them. You just happen to be standing there in front of them. An individual who's upset might become defensive and verbally attack you. So stay calm, take a deep breath, and pause before responding. Only address the business issue or the work-related matter, because remember, that's what you are there for. You are at the office.
So what do you do when somebody doesn't follow, in particular the ROS rule, when they're bringing in personal issues into the discussion?
Well, it depends. I'm going to say whose personal issues. Are they their personal issues? Like, I can't concentrate right now because I'm upset because we've had something happen in the family. Because that's an opportunity to try to show some compassion and not to push them too hard if they're in a difficult spot. If they're making it personal about you, it's okay to let them know that, you're not there to discuss that. And, it depends. Is it personal about me? I don't like the way you dress. I don't like the way you wear your hair. That's not their issue. If it's personal, Margaret, I don't like your tone of voice when you talk to me, I need to listen to that. So it depends on, and I'll say what we're calling personal.
And let's go back to bullet point 1 here, listen, really listen. When do you know that you've listened enough and that you can move on to now the discussion part of this all?
Well, see, that's good because that can be very difficult to assess. But when the person no longer has anything new to say, and you've assured them that they've been heard, and when you ask them questions and they don't have any fresh answers.
All right.
But remember, when they walk away, they may come back later with some more things that you need to listen to again.
That makes sense. All right. And that's it for your free PDU podcast sample. Please stop by at pducast.com, that's pducast.com, to order your full subscription to the PDU podcast and start earning at least one PDU every month. Until next time.